Hey, before we get started, I wanted to share that I've developed a brand new presentation. It's called More Than a Tree, Reaching Your Roots, Standing Tall, and Branching Out. More Than a Tree is a presentation about my experiences with ADHD, discovering that I have ADHD at 50 years old. But it's much more than that. I'll be sharing ways to know yourself, to unleash your hidden superpowers. I'll be talking about respecting yourself and finally, how to find the others, how to find your community, people like you. Please drop by wisesquirrels.com/tree. I'm very excited about delivering this presentation for companies, for conferences, for any opportunities where you feel my message is important. And I would sincerely appreciate you reaching out and letting me know where you think I should be sharing More Than a Tree. Thanks. Welcome to Wise Squirrels, the podcast for late diagnosed adults with ADHD. I'm your host, Dave Delaney. I've always been very hyper-focused on creating content. I get an idea and I write the blog post or launch the podcast or create the post on Instagram or, insert idea here. And that has also made my content rather scattered over the years. And when I was diagnosed with ADHD this year, I did it again. I launched this website and this podcast, Wise Squirrels. I've always been a big proponent of social media, certainly in the earliest days. I like being transparent. I like sharing what I'm learning so that others can also benefit from that knowledge that I consume and then share. It's the purpose of why I started Wise Squirrels. I started it as a place for me to learn about this, but also for you. And I hope you are enjoying it. I really do. The best way you can let me know is by letting me know. If you have ADHD, you probably crave feedback like I do. And it's one of the biggest things about creating content is this craving and need for feedback. Because the truth is, I don't know how I'm doing. I don't know how this show is benefiting you, if it's benefiting you. I've had one review on Apple Podcasts from Seth. And thank you, Seth. I appreciate that. I really do. And so what I'm asking for today is for you to please take a moment and leave me a review. Let me know how I'm doing. And if reviews are not your jam, that's okay. If you email me, hello@wisesquirrels.com, or you can hit me up on social media. Just go to wisesquirrels.com. Under the More button, you'll find the social media button, and that's where you can find all the links to our social profiles. But without feedback, I don't know how I'm doing. And without feedback, I'll probably end up quitting. I have a habit of that. And maybe you do too. Maybe you've rushed to start things, be hyper-focused, be creative, all that good stuff, and then realize, what am I doing here? Or maybe running out of steam on it. I love what I'm doing here, and I love learning about this. Certainly for myself. I like to learn publicly. I like to share what's going on. And so that's the purpose of what I'm doing with Wise Squirrels. And I encourage you to do the same. We're all in this together, assuming you are also a late diagnosed adult with ADHD like me. Or maybe you're somebody who thinks they might have ADHD, but don't know. And if you don't know, I created a link on wisesquirrels.com that has an ADHD assessment. Of course, you have to talk to a doctor first and foremost, but you can take the assessment and see for yourself what those findings are like. And they certainly will help you in communicating this with your doctor. All right, I'm going to shut up and keep talking. So this is a quick reminder that the content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am not a medical professional, so always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider regarding any medical condition, including ADHD. Reliance on any information provided by this podcast is solely at your own discretion. All right. Today's episode is a deep dive into the world of ADHD and coaching and life coaching. I'm excited to introduce our special guest, Cindy North from Empower M3. Cindy is an experienced ADHD life coach, and she's here to share her insights into managing ADHD. And she breaks down misconceptions and she shares strategies for success. Let's get on with the show. First of all, I'm excited to speak with you because, obviously the goal of this podcast is to help, other late diagnosed adults with ADHD. So Cindy, tell me a little bit about your practice, your business with Empower M3.
So thanks, Dave, so much for having me on the podcast, Wise Squirrels. I love the work that you're doing here to help bring this community together. So my business is called Empower Me. It's where I bring the three things together, your head, heart, with the coach partner to help you get where you want to go. I help ADHDers as early as teens, college students on up, recently business professionals, just really looking to move their symptoms towards strategies that can work for them. A lot of times there's that stigma behind, especially those who are late diagnosed, of how their brain works differently. And I really try hard to help my clients utilize their best strengths to shore up the struggles they might be having, just to move from that chaos way of living towards more freedom, ease, and flow, pairing some positive intelligence work that I do, just with my, continued desire to understand ADHD and what it does to this community and how to serve them. So it's been an absolute pleasure becoming a coach and working with such amazing people, and I want them to feel amazing. So a lot of them don't come to me feeling that way, but hopefully by the time they've gone through the process of coaching, they have been able to kind of attain that for themselves, and an absolute joy.
How long have you been coaching now?
I've been coaching for 3 years and got certified through the ICF and with my ACC, and then recently through Positive Intelligence. I really believe in having that certification background and showing, how I believe in ethics and the standards of coaching, and really wanting to provide expertise for my clients. And, 3 years isn't that long, but each client that I work with is teaching me more, and hopefully they're learning more, and such a great collaboration and partnership. And I look forward to doing it for many, many years to come.
And your 13 and 17-year-olds both were diagnosed with ADHD, right?
Correct.
Was this what kind of set you along the path to doing this? Tell me about that.
Absolutely. I had, jumped through all the hoops, starting with like nutrition, diet changes, trying to find out if that could help, CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy. We did family therapy. We did, OT. I jumped through all the hoops before medication as a mom, feeling so responsible for the choices I made for my kids because they were young at the time. I knew things were different from the first grade teacher telling me, but didn't get diagnosis until fifth grade. So it took a long time for my son. And then for my daughter, I was very aware of what was going on, but it's still the process of getting diagnosis, with getting into professionals and everybody on board still took, 2.5 years for her. It was that then led me to coaching. Like I needed something else. And so I started parent coaching. And then the parent coach said, hey, I don't typically work with, children this young, but I'm willing to do it with you because I can see how invested you are and what you know. And so we started that. And then she's like, well, why are you not coaching? You should become a coach. And I never thought about it. I had worked with kids and worked with the ADHD population prior to this. And so it just became the glove that fit. And it happened very quickly, and it was the journey. It just happened.
It's such an interesting thing too. Like a lot of coaches I've spoken to have mentioned that, have talked about how, yeah, it was either other coaches or therapists or people that they were seeing who recommended they become a coach, which is interesting. Like I love how supportive that is. So from a parenting coach, kind of led you on this path in a way.
Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't have known about it. I didn't know about it. It took me forever to even find out that there was coaching. I still have clients today that'll say, I just learned about coaching. I think it's becoming a lot more prevalent. But when even 5 years ago, when I was starting to dive into it, I did not know about ADHD life coaching. It was not something, I probably would have tried this way earlier as a parent, so I could have had the support had I known that I could have had that partnership, because I needed it back then. And then when the coach said, hey, recognize that's such an affirmation to have somebody else see something in you, and then you go on to do it. So it definitely was that spark that lit a serious fire in me.
Yeah. And I'm curious how, of your adults with ADHD clients, tell me a little bit about, not obviously naming names, but as far as who they are, in the sense that I've been fascinated, and I ask these questions regarding myself here too, but I believe the statistic is that you are, I think it's 200 times more likely to start a business if you have ADHD. Mm-hmm. And that, we look at all these different entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs. Richard Branson is the first one that comes to mind, who's been outspoken about his own diagnosis with ADHD. Do you find that too with your adult clients? Are they business owners, entrepreneurs?
They are. I mean, even the ones that are within businesses, say they work for somebody, they still typically have something else they're fostering, some other project that they're growing. Or putting in front of people that are, those important people that need to see this new thing that's, an idea that they've come up with.
Yeah.
But absolutely, I see that very creative mind is coming out in my clientele that I see, and absolutely, I think that's what's so fascinating, is to help them find the skills to make that work for them. Mm-hmm. Because being an entrepreneur, you're wearing a lot of hats if you're, not putting feelers out into other areas to have people doing it for you. And if you don't have some of those executive functioning skills, it can become a real challenge to get your great ideas or get your wonderful business to thrive. And that's where I get to come in and kind of pick away at, okay, what is getting in the way of this being, really truly meeting its greatness.
And what are some of those challenges that you find with folks, maybe some common challenges that they're faced with, and some strategies to help cope with those challenges?
I think it's for the struggles I see is getting the idea, if you've got those idea makers, getting the idea made and out there is not the hard part. It's then initiating and executing it through and making the everyday work manageable, so that they can then move that new business or move that idea up the pipe so that it can be profitable for them. It's that ability to stay motivated on something when things, when maybe that shiny new object is not as exciting, then planning comes in, where they got to start putting the pieces together, being organized through their thoughts, because sometimes the ideas just come in, they're all over the place, grasping them. So it's time management. It's, being able to forecast and see the things that could be coming, from in the future place, instead of that, either now or never, really being able to execute on that, and, not always using procrastination to ignite them, doing getting a project put together at the very last minute because they're running on adrenaline then, instead of, because that's exhausting eventually, to keep that pace. And I think that's where the, individuals I work with, when they come to me, they're at that exhausted place, and they're completely have such ability inside, but they're using it in a misfit way that is not letting them get to their peak performance.
Are there common things that you do? Like what's an activity or a tactic that you recommend they do to kind of improve their focus and, stay on task?
So one thing, with coaching, it's very individual. So, aside from me offering ideas and tactics or strategies, usually we're really working through what works for the individual and figuring out how their brain is, managing through the day. So we first start with what the day is like. So we become much more aware. I think the first key element to understanding, how to get a tactic in place is to understand what you're doing first. And so we work a lot initially on self-awareness, just becoming aware of the habits that the individual has, kind of bringing that to the forefront, because a lot of times we just do and don't even realize, like when we get stuck in an hour's gone by and we thought it was like 10 minutes because we're hyper-focused and don't realize. So it's becoming, so it's a lot of that, of like really starting to record and recognize what we're doing. And then sometimes bringing in other key people that are in our lives, like to help us to be a detective. So it's that ability to be a detective without judgment is a huge piece of this. It's not to bring out the negative thinking of there I go again, or I did that, getting that shame built up. It's none of that. It's all in just what do we know now and what do we do next. So then identifying the habits that an individual has, like first with sleep, are they up in the morning or are they sleeping in? So when are their peak brain hours? Really understanding that piece. So then we can start building in the tactics. And as far as like suggesting tactics, usually that comes when they're like completely at the end of like their ability to be creative with themselves, like to know what works. Like sometimes I might suggest, like for an example, I had a client who was really trying to get things done. And so, we talked about lists and we talked about planners and, which is all the regular go-to things. And ultimately she came up with using a dry erase marker on a mirror to put the 3 things that she wanted to get done. And she would see it every time she went in there. And it was the easy reminder. And I can tell you, I wouldn't have come up with that idea on my own, but I love the idea. So the idea, like that thought of someone's going to tell me what to do and they're going to fix me, quote unquote, is not how my style of coaching goes. We really become very keyed into that individual's current habits, ones that are working, ones that are no longer serving them, and then kind of, as the conversation and coaching process goes, something like that with the dry erase on a mirror comes to light. And a new, rejuvenated way of a list is, sparking that individual's, like motivation to do it, because the paper wasn't working.
Yeah. So just having like having those 3 tasks of the day in front of you, where you're going to see them.
Exactly.
Serves as a good reminder. Yeah, that's true actually. And I've found this works for me quite well as well, because and especially if they're not, I find a lot of like the to-do type apps often don't work for me because of the distraction associated with the phone. So like, if you pick up your phone to check your to-do list, suddenly it's like, oh, there's a tweet for me or some notification, and then you fall down the rabbit hole. Do you have any strategies associated with technology and maybe avoiding distraction that way? Because I mean, these, smartphones and the apps are all designed to, designed to really hijack our attention and our time. So
absolutely.
Any thoughts on that?
Exactly. I mean, that's their whole purpose is to, engage us, right? So if we do not want to be engaged in that, we know first that awareness detective piece, like how much time are you spending on your phone and how distracting is it? So one tactic I had a client come up with is all of her apps are off of her front home screen. She has to slide to get to the next one. Making it harder to get to the things that distract you can help, like if not having notifications for like the new tweet, unless that's really important. Like for some people, they need to know these things, but knowing when you're going to pick that up. So I'm going to pick that up at top of the hour, or, I'm only like that discipline. So that's another thing that, like with coaching, is really working on discipline. Like, what is it, in your life that you need to be disciplined to, or, from, I guess we could say to. But it's, so one of those tactics of make it harder to get to, don't have to sign in so that you're not, because that's taking ease of access away from the distracting thing. So if you're just wanting to be able to do your to-do list, that's the front and foremost thing right on the front of the phone. And everything else is kind of buried in there in a way that you can still easily get to what you have to get to. So if you don't want to be on Facebook, make it a few pages in a tab, make it a little bit harder to just not easily click on, because as soon as our brain sees that, we click. It's that instant. So you got to make it a little bit harder to follow through on it, because that's a little self-check. Like, do I want to put my password in again?
Yeah. I remember early on, I worked in, digital marketing for a lot of my career. And I remember looking at advertising on Facebook back in the day. And one of the ads you could get was a full page ad on the logout page. And I was like, who would go to the logout page? Nobody logs out of Facebook anymore. Like, everybody's, people are logged in all day. So yeah, logging out might be a wise move there too.
Yeah, logging out is a challenge. Like, people don't want to do it because it's absolute ease of access. So if you're trying to not do something, make it harder. If you are trying to do something, find a way to make it easier.
What are some other ways to make things easier for adults? Some steps to make it easier.
So I think, one, it depends on what you're trying to make easier. So if you're trying to become more time aware, a lot of times noise like a chiming clock, might help. Or, building in some sort of, like, they have different apps for clocks, on your phone that'll chime on the top of the hour, the bottom of the hour, whatever you might need, just to build in some sensory awareness of time. Like the different types of clocks, digital or analog. Being able to see time move is another thing that is helpful. People use the Pomodoro method for getting work done. So that's like that ability to start using time to fit your needs. Planning, it's actually having that ability to sit down, whether it's on a Sunday or once first thing in the morning, or if you need to think about it the day before, what is it you're going to do next? So that could be like, what am I going to do next would be for tomorrow. What do I have on my schedule? That's really helpful for business professionals who might not have those skills built in for planning ahead for their meetings. Like, the reminder always comes 10 minutes before and they're not ready. Building in a new reminder. I caution my clients to be mindful of the reminders, that they're not training their brain to swipe left. It is important that if you put a reminder in there, it is something that you're going to want and choose to let your attention be drawn to, not just ignore it, because everything we do, we're really just retraining, or we're training our brain. Neural pathways, we're laying more and more of it down. So if we do something the same way and it's not serving us, then we have to find the new way that will serve us, not train our brain to keep doing it the way that's not helpful. So, reminders are great, but how do you use them? Same thing with alarms. If you're putting an alarm on your phone and you just ignore it or snooze, it's the same purpose of training your brain to not pay attention to that. So I caution anyone who's trying new techniques, just let them be playful. Let it be an experiential learning thing. Like, yep, that worked. No, that didn't. One thing here worked. And then to bring some other, it's like the mirror with the dry erase. Bringing two things. It's, instead of the whiteboard, it was the dry erase board. My whiteboard is on my door going out to the garage. I see it every time I walk out there, and I know what's in, I have to catch my memory. I externalize it.
Yeah, that's wise. That's really wise. With the you mentioned in there the Pomodoro method, and for listeners not familiar, can you explain what that is?
Sure. So, I mean, there's different philosophies on the time frame, but it is basically pick a chunk of time that you're going to work, and then pick a chunk of time that you're going to rest or take a break. When I use this method and help my clients learn about how to implement it in their life, I caution to not go more than 30 minutes, because that's about what the brain attention can, is healthy for the brain to stay focused on something. And then to take a 5 to 10 minute break, but not to just be distracted by something else, not to, go to your phone, because that is not actually giving yourself brain recharging. I teach my clients through the Positive Intelligence program how to really use presence to get back into their body, how to use their senses to just notice what's around them, to build attention. So when there's attention deficit, we want to build attention. Well, how do we build attention? It's by learning how to listen to our body. Our body is full of stimuli and taking in so much we often don't pay attention to. So that 10 minutes is really to recharge the brain and then get back to work again. So there's a lot on the internet about the different techniques and how to go about it, but it's basically, you can get up, move around for 10 minutes or whatever your time frame is, and then you're right back at it. You get right back into what you were doing.
Yeah, I've been meaning to try that for a long time. I've done different methods, but I like the idea, and I just haven't bought it. But the Pomodoro method actually comes from, I believe that's Italian for tomato, right? It comes from a tomato timer. I could be making that up, and I apologize to our Italian listeners. I might have completely just butchered that. But
well, now I'm going to totally look it up because I'm not sure myself. So now I'm intrigued.
Pomodoro. Yeah, I thought it was tomato, but there is like a red tomato timer that you can buy, and that has this. And there's other like alarms you can buy that actually have these presets, kind of created for this specific reason. I have a friend of mine actually and I wish I did this when I wrote my book. And I will probably do it. In fact, I will do it when I write my next book, which is. She and like 2 other author friends, so like 3 authors, would have a Zoom call together, and following the Pomodoro method, they would spend I think it was 20 or maybe 30 minutes writing, and then 5-minute breaks to talk. Mm-hmm. And so, but they were on camera with one another, holding each other accountable. So it was like, okay, shut up. We can't talk. Work, right. And so, they would go off. They'd still be on camera, but they'd be, hammering their keyboard or researching or whatever. And then after writing, after the timer went off, they would reconvene and share and just, kind of talk about whatever. And then after that 5-minute break, get back to it.
Yep.
So yeah. And that, this is not, I don't know if any of them have ADHD or not, but I thought that was a pretty interesting, idea.
No, it's a great one. In fact, I think there's a coach who uses this in her coaching where she will, for decluttering or for getting your home organized or cleaned up, form a group of whomever it is. You sign in, you've got a Zoom link, you're going to clean for a period of time, you're going to declutter for a period of time, and then everybody's going to chat for 5 minutes to get the break, and then everybody's going to go off to do their thing. It's that accountability. It's holding accountability for each other because you're all doing like-minded things and you're all accomplishing something. And it really does work. It's a beautiful way of bringing technology and accomplishing a common good. And I love that you shared about the authors, because writing a book on your own can be very challenging.
Oh, trust me, I know.
I bet you do.
Oh my gosh. To talk, it's incredible. Because I did write the book, my first book, before I was diagnosed with ADHD and or medicated or anything. So it's a miracle that I actually pulled it off somehow, and it got good reviews. So yeah,
that's awesome. And that's the thing. So that's the thing. You can accomplish things like write the book, and it was hard. And then now that you know more about yourself, and you have hopefully more strategies that work for you, that when you write your second book and future books, you'll have new tools and won't have to fight the process so hard. And that's what That's why ADHD Life Coaching is great, is because you're working really hard together to make life easier, to do all those things that you want to do. So you're not having to make it, this horrible, hard thing to create something that ended up being, wonderful for the community. I mean, getting good reviews, it's serving other people, that's a great thing. I'm sure the next will do it, and you'll have hopefully a little bit more ease and flow in the process.
Yeah. And you've mentioned the positive intelligence program, and I know a little bit about how it's really designed to enhance mental fitness, and it cultivates a positive mindset, and to sort of overcome those negative thoughts, which I know are especially prevalent in folks with ADHD, and I'm the first to admit to that. As I mentioned, like when I was writing my book, New Business Networking, I was going through like all this self-doubt and impostor syndrome and all this. And I reached out to other author friends, and they all agreed, like, this is part of the process of writing a book. You're going to go through self-doubt and all this and imposter syndrome. But of course that can be like, up to 11 for folks with ADHD. And it certainly was that high for me. So tell us a little bit about the positive intelligence program and how it works, and how it can benefit folks.
Sure. So the Positive Intelligence Program was developed by Shirzad Chamine, and has grown immensely since, he founded it. It is basically a mental fitness app that I guide my clients through. So it's you can use it on your phone or your desktop or your computer, and it's a 7-week initial boot camp, so to speak, of identifying the 9 saboteur thinking habits we all have, along with our judge of ourselves, circumstances, and others, and really understanding where these, habits of thinking, there are, these characters, so to speak, like an avoider or a restless or the pleaser, hyperachiever. There's 9 of them, and where they started in our childhood to help us stay safe. Our brains are wired, fear wired. The fight, flight, freeze is, instinctive and strong, and that all comes from surviving. The ADHD brain wants to survive. It's that, shiny new thing, or really trying to make sure that you're not just basing life through fear action. Like, am I doing this out of fear? Am I avoiding writing the book or publishing the book out of fear? So identifying how those saboteurs act in our life and what is, at our highest level, usually, your judge and your top 2 show up pretty consistently. They're the habits that you formed as a child to survive. And they're really your greatest strengths just used in overdrive. They're not serving you at their best. So through mental fitness, which is really getting into your awareness of your body, understanding and recognizing the sensations that you're feeling, shifting where the brain is firing. That's what's happening. So when you're thinking about the negative side and all your saboteurs are showing up, that's a different area of your brain that's firing. So when you start getting into your body and noticing senses and hear, what do you hear? What are you smelling? What's your body feel like? When you start using that part of your brain, then you can move towards the positive thinking, which is what Shirzad calls towards your sage powers, where you can be able to have empathy for yourself or others. You can learn to explore what's happening, be more innovative, navigate through problems, and activate. All those areas are so needed in the ADHD brain. So pairing this with ADHD clients who are struggling with their own self-awareness and their own emotional, dysregulation has been a huge benefit, because they are starting to recognize what they're thinking. They're catching it by being more aware of their body, which is building that attention, and they're moving towards these areas that are, going to benefit them greater by being creative, which a lot, and tapping into ways to navigate forward, which is planning, how to activate, that's motivation. So really training some of those weaker areas by activating that part of the brain.
So you go through this process with your clients. Is that part of the beginning stages? Like you start to work with a client and you go through the PQ program with them.
Yep.
Is that right?
So what I do is right now I'm not doing it in a group format. So I work with my clients one-on-one right now, because I feel like ADHD is very individual. So when we do the 7 weeks together, it's individual. Clients who start with me, we get to know each other, build that trust in the first month or so, and understanding of what's showing up, building some awareness, and then they go into the program so that they can really start getting in tune with themselves. And it's usually, between, 3 months of coaching, or most of my clients that go through the PQ program with me will do 6 months, so that we can really build the foundation that then they can go off and have the habits, because you're rewiring the brain to serve you in a better way, and you need the time. You've been practicing it for a lifetime the other way. This is, a new way, and I have I've been doing it for 2 years myself. I'm certified in positive intelligence as a coach. I went through their mastery program so that I could see what this is like for me. If I'm able to pause myself so that I don't go off the handle when XYZ thing blows up in my family, then I'm starting to notice that I can center myself without letting all the saboteur thoughts and habits, they're there, that I can kind of calm the fire and, so to speak, instead of letting it just, rage on. And it's huge.
And when we talk, you've mentioned rewiring the brain a lot. Like, what does it mean to rewire the brain?
So I think rewiring. So you're absolutely right. You're not curing it, because it's not there's dopamine, and there's a chemical imbalance, right? So it's not that you're rewiring it in the sense of all of a sudden you're going to have more dopamine. It is the rewiring piece is those instinctual habits that we develop, over a course of our life. Wiring in the new habits and pairing the things that we want to do that are hard with the things that come easier. And it's not necessarily that when I say rewiring, that you're going to cure the ADHD aspect of the brain. It's supporting it. So, if we have a negative mindset and that's where our brain wants to naturally go, we're not going to intercept that until we notice it. And when we notice that there's the voice there, then we are able to have a process. So like positive intelligence is a framework. It's something you follow for life, because you have to be intentional and aware. And if you're not, then you're going to go down the habit path. And whatever your habits are that you built is where you're going to go. Not that you're going to change the fact that you have ADHD and that you will have struggles. You're going to scaffold them with things that help move you in a direction where it's easier to live life in the way that the box is set for us in society.
It also helps define community.
Absolutely.
Do you find that you now, as an ADHD coach, do you spot it in people constantly? Like whether it's somebody at the grocery store or what have you, and because I just learning about this for myself, I've started thinking like, oh gosh, yeah, I know somebody who definitely is, or even when I announced, I guess I kind of announced it with a blog post that I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I posted it on Facebook and so on, and had so many comments from friends who were like, oh yeah, I've always thought I do too. And I'm like, yeah, I know now. I know you do. Do you do this? Do you spot this a lot in people?
I think I see the tendency. So it's not like I'm just that, I wonder if they know or have it. Because what I know is people hide it. It's not something that, like, for you to come out and say it is huge. I think it's wonderful. I wish more people could own who they are. It's hard to be vulnerable in this world. But as a coach, yes, you'll see like where you're talking to somebody, or maybe you just gravitate towards people who are having conversation and you notice things that come up, or you work with people and you're like, gosh, life could be so much easier if they had, some tools for that. I think it's anytime. It's like the red car. Like you buy a red car and you think you have the red car, and then all of a sudden everybody else has the same red car as you, and you're like, well, I thought I had the cool car. It's very similar. You start seeing something that you didn't pay attention to before as much as you do now. What I kind of find funny is, in my family, we have a lot of animals, and so, they're like, gosh, why do we have all these ADHD animals? We're rescuing all these ADHD animals. And I'm like, and so my kids think it's funny. Like they think our dog, he really does seem like he could be ADHD. His brain is all over in every which direction. My other dog, she would just stay on her ball for the rest of her life. She loves it. Yeah. So I do think that when we start knowing something, we start seeing it.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's absolutely. Tell me a little bit about for you personally. You've done a lot of travel. You've lived in multiple states across the country. From Arizona, you're in Kentucky now, and have you? And I know you're in rural Kentucky. You have horses and your dogs. So you mentioned, I think, a pig and possibly a goat or goats.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that and maybe how it pertains to the work you do or the person you are.
Okay, so I grew up, my dad was in the Air Force, career Air Force, and so I got to move around. I look at that as a privilege now, although as a kid I hated that. And I was really exposed to different areas of our country and meeting a lot of different types of people and different cultures, which I think really enhanced who I am as a person. That really, I really tend to see the good in all people and really work hard to. Mm-hmm. And as far as, I always wanted to have my animals at home. I've always loved animals, even from early age until now. They've been a grounding, force for me. I had horses, when I was young and a teenager, kept me out of trouble. So when I had children, I wanted to give them the same thing of the opportunity to be loved, so unconditionally by something. And my husband and I, both have always loved horses for a long time. And we found this little place outside of Lexington, Kentucky, and it's our little oasis. And yes, we have a pet pig who is best friends with my horse. Mm-hmm. And so it's, these oddities, my daughter is doing chickens, and we did the 4-H thing with goats. But what it really helped with when my kids were younger was having something else that they needed to be responsible for that was bigger and outside of themselves. Really gave them that motivation to learn some of these skills, to learn how to control their emotions, because you can't behave a certain way around certain animals. How to follow through on getting up and feeding and taking care of things. So I think for how that translates, to people who I coach is, being able to just know that there's other things outside of ourselves that are important for us to follow through on. That could be a plant, it can be as small as that, or a fish bowl, where you have a little pet fish. And if you have kids, you can be able to foster some care within your children by giving them that opportunity to have animals. For me, it's just been something that I just deeply care about. And at one point I was going to use the horses for coaching. Then COVID happened right when I was launching my business. And that kind of went to the wayside, unfortunately, and it has taken off in a different direction. And I just feel that, we're on a journey. I've gone the way I've gone because that's where life is taking me right now. But it's a big part of who I am. I wear a lot of hats in my life, which I think helps me identify with the clientele who have great ideas and want to do things and maybe have their hands in a lot of different areas, how to manage that so you can manage the stress, so you can know when to take one hat off and put on another, how to be present in your interests and follow through it. And self-care is a huge thing, which we haven't even mentioned. For ADHD, most of the time that's falling well by the wayside. Part of my self-care is going out there and being with my animals. They give me a lot of joy.
I'm sure they do. Our little Peggy does too. Our mini Aussie.
Fun.
She's a bundle of fun.
I bet.
Was there anything I didn't ask you about that you wanted to maybe discuss, or are you feeling good?
I feel great. I guess like just this, your choice to put this together and to bring, the community to understand what's available, share the strategies, share options so that people who have, neurodivergent brains can access their greatest ability and move forward. I think is beautiful, and I love the space that you're creating. I would just say, for anybody who is stuck, maybe they aren't diagnosed, but they think maybe they have ADHD, or they just are starting to recognize the things they're struggling with, that there are different ways of doing things that make a difference. And what one person says works does not, if it doesn't work for you, doesn't mean that it's bad or that you're bad. It just means you got to tweak that just some. It might not be even that much. The other thing is what works today might not work tomorrow. So that frustration level of just instead being curious and finding that self-love, I think is huge. Because I think that shame just takes over, and I don't want, if I could dispel anything, it would be to take that away and have people find love for themselves and what is great within them.
That's great. Thank you, Cindy, so much. Yeah, it's been such a pleasure. How can folks get a hold of you or learn more about what you do?
Sure. So I do have a website. It's empowerm3.com. And they could reach out to me by email, Cindy, Cindy, at empowerm3.com. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. Shoot me a message. I'm here to serve and help people in any way I can. And if it doesn't fit, if I'm not the right person, I want to help people find it. So even if I'm not stepping stone, however people can get what they need is what I want for them.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I'll make sure to keep or include the notes to everything we talked about here in the show notes so folks can click the link over and visit you and reach out. So,
Great,
Cindy, thank you so much for your time today. This has been really helpful.
You are very welcome, Dave. I appreciate all you're doing and look forward to listening to what you put together for our community. I'll be an active listener.
Thanks for listening to Wise Squirrels. I'm Dave Delaney. The music to the show is Unyielding Conditioning by the one and only Fishbone. And you can find that song and all of Fishbone's music wherever you stream music. We thank them for this. We love Fishbone. Are you a wise squirrel? Visit wisesquirrels.com to find out. And let's keep the conversation going. I'll see you there.